The following is a brief history of the North American rail system, mainly through major changes to Class I railroads. The largest class by operating revenue. 1977 – The Virginia and Maryland Railroad replaces Conrail on most of the old New York, Philadelphia and Norfolk Railroad. Operations are transferred to the Eastern Shore Railroad in 1981 and to the Bay Coast Railroad in 2006. October 1 – The Michigan Interstate Railway begins operating the former Ann Arbor Railroad, taking over from Conrail on trackage owned by the state of Michigan. December 1 – The number of Class I railroads goes up by 1, from 58 to 59, due to the startup of the Michigan Interstate Railway. 1978 – April 1 – Crown Corporation via Rail Canada takes over operations of intercity passenger trains from the Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Limited. October 24 – The Penn Central Corporation emerges from reorganization as a real estate company. It has given up its 1/6 share of the Richmond, Fredericksburg and Potomac Railroad. November 1 – The Missouri-Illinois Railroad is merged into parent Missouri Pacific Railroad. December 31 – The ICC raises the minimum operating revenue from $10 million to $50 million effective January 1, 1978, dropping 17 railroads to Class II. Bangor and Aroostook Railroad, Canadian Pacific Lines in Maine, Central Vermont Railway, Chicago and Illinois Midland Railway, Detroit and Toledo Shoreline Railroad, Duluth, Winnipeg and Pacific Railway, Georgia Railroad, Georgia Southern and Florida Railway, Illinois Terminal Railroad, Maine Central Railroad, Michigan Interstate Railway, Missouri-Illinois Railroad, Norfolk Southern Railway, Northwestern Pacific Railroad, Richmond, Fredericksburg and Potomac Railroad, Texas Mexican Railway, Toledo, Peoria and Western Railroad. The Auto Train Corporation and National Railroad Passenger Corporation are also removed from the list, which now only includes freight carriers, reducing the number of Class I railroads from 59 at the end of 1977 to 40 as of December 31, 1978. 1979 – The Spokane, Portland and Seattle Railway is dissolved, its property going to Lessee Burlington Northern Inc. November 1 – The San Diego Metropolitan Transit Development Board purchases control of the San Diego and Arizona Eastern Railway from parent Southern Pacific Transportation Company, which continues to operate east of Plaster City. Freight service west of Plaster City will be operated by several companies, most recently the Carrizo Gorge Railway and San Diego and Imperial Valley Railroad. 1980 – The Colorado and Wyoming Railway abandons its operations in Wyoming. March 1 – The Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific Railroad, in trusteeship since February 13, 1978, abandons all operations west of Miles City, Montana. Very little of this trackage is taken over by other railroads. March 31 – After a bankruptcy that started on March 17, 1975, and directed operation by the Kansas City Terminal Railway since October 5, 1979, the Chicago, Rock Island and Pacific Railroad shuts down entirely. Over the next few years, other railroads will buy large portions of the Rock Island's system, most notably the Iowa Interstate Railroad, Chicago and Northwestern Transportation Company, Missouri, Kansas, Texas Railroad subsidiary, Oklahoma, Kansas and Texas Railroad, and Southern Pacific Transportation Company subsidiary St. Louis Southwestern Railway. The Fort Worth and Denver Railway becomes sole owner of the Joint Texas Division, formerly owned by the Burlington Rock Island Railroad until 1964 and then equally by the two companies. June 24, the Grand Trunk Western Railroad buys control of the Detroit, Toledo and Arlington Railroad from the Penn Central Corporation. September 2, the New York, Susquehanna and Western Railway begins operating the former New York, Susquehanna and Western Railroad, which filed for bankruptcy in January 1976. November 1, Chassis System, Inc. and Seaboard Coast Line Industries merged to form the CSX Corporation, parent of the Atlanta and West Point Railroad, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, Clinchfield Railroad, Georgia Railroad, Louisville and Nashville Railroad, Seaboard Coast Line Railroad, Staten Island Railroad, Western Railway of Alabama, and Western Maryland Railway. November 21, the St. Louis-San Francisco Railway merges into Burlington Northern Inc. 1981 Burlington Northern Inc. merges subsidiaries Oregon Electric Railway and Oregon Trunk Railway into a new subsidiary, Burlington Northern Inc. January 12, the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway acquires full control of the Toledo, Peoria and Western Railroad by buying the Penn Central Corporation's 50% share. April 13, the Grand Trunk Western Railroad gains control of the Detroit and Toledo Shoreline Railroad by buying the 50% share owned by the Norfolk and Western Railway. April 30, the Auto Train Corporation ceases operations. Amtrak's Auto Train replacement will begin on October 30, 1983. May 14, Burlington Northern Inc. is renamed Burlington Northern Railroad. June 8, the Quanah, Acme and Pacific Railway merges into parent Burlington Northern Railroad. June 16, Guilford Transportation Industries purchases the Maine Central Railroad. August, the Hooper-Myron Corporation, an affiliate of the Kankakee, Beaverville and Southern Railroad, buys a portion of the old Chicago, Detroit and Southeastern Railway between Hooper and Danville, Illinois from the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific Railroad. The rest of the old Chicago Southern has been abandoned, while the remnant of the CTH and AMP Cheyenne, Indiana was sold in 2006 to the Indiana Railroad. September 1, the Norfolk and Western Railway acquires the property of the Illinois Terminal Railroad, formerly controlled jointly by 11 railroads. October 1, the Detroit and Toledo Shoreline Railroad is merged into parent her Trunk Western Railroad. December 31, the Colorado and Southern Railway is merged into parent Burlington Northern Railroad. 1982 In preparation for common control with the Norfolk and Western Railway by the Norfolk Southern Corporation, Southern Railway subsidiary Norfolk Southern Railway is renamed Carolina and Northwestern Railway, a company it had merged with in 1974. The Providence and Worcester Railroad expands its operations to include Amtrak's Northeast Corridor between Pawtucket, Rhode Island and Old Saybrook, Connecticut, a former main line of the New York, New Haven and Hartford Railroad and most recently Conrail. In 1991 these freight rights are extended from Old Saybrook to East Haven. The New York, Susquehanna and Western Railway buys several lines from Conrail. This includes most of the old Syracuse, Binghamton and New York Railroad and a piece of the old Lehigh and Hudson River Railway between Sparta, New Jersey and Warwick, New York. After the NYS-NAMP-W rehabilitates its trackage between Butler and Sparta, the latter becomes part of its main line in 1986. January 1, the Akron, Canton and Youngstown Railroad is merged into the Norfolk and Western Railway, its owner since 1964. March 31, the Chicago, Milwaukee, Street, Paul and Pacific Railroad, in trusteeship since February 13, 1978, abandons all operations west of Ortonville, Minnesota. The Burlington Northern Railroad takes over operations on much of this trackage. June 1, the Norfolk Southern Corporation takes control of the Norfolk and Western Railway and Southern Railway. June, the Sioux Line Railroad gains control of the Minneapolis, Northfield and Southern Railway. October, the Michigan Interstate Railway discontinues operations on the former Ann Arbor Railroad north of Ann Arbor. The Tuscola and Saginaw Bay Railway takes over from Ann Arbor north to Alma, and the Michigan Northern Railway operates the remainder to Frankfort until 1983, when it too goes to the TNAMP-SB. The latter company is renamed Great Lakes Central Railroad in 2006. November 4, the Seaboard Coastline Railroad acquires the rail assets of the Georgia Railroad and Banking Company, and absorbs lessee Georgia Railroad, jointly controlled by the SCL and subsidiary Louisville and Nashville Railroad. December 22, the Union Pacific Railroad gains control of the Missouri Pacific Railroad and Western Pacific Railroad. December 31, the Fort Worth and Denver Railway is merged into parent Burlington Northern Railroad. 1983, the Tuscola and Saginaw Bay Railway, which operates the old Ann Arbor Railroad between Ann Arbor and Alma, expands its operations north to Frankfort-on-Ex, Grand Rapids and Indiana Railway trackage north of Cadillac, replacing the Michigan Northern Railway. The Montour Railroad ceases operations. The Nevada Northern Railway ceases operations. The Northern Nevada Railroad will resume freight service in January 1995, but in June 1996 the BHP Nevada Railroad will take over until July 1999, when freight is again discontinued. January 1, the CSX Corporation merges subsidiaries Seaboard Coastline Railroad and Louisville and Nashville Railroad to form the Seaboard System Railroad. February 11, the Clinchfield Railroad, an unincorporated entity organized jointly by the Atlantic Coastline Railroad and subsidiary Louisville and Nashville Railroad to operate the Carolina, Clinchfield and Ohio Railway under lease, is dissolved, as both lessees have merged into the Seaboard System Railroad. May 1, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad begins operating the lines of subsidiary Western Maryland Railway. May 31, the New Orleans Great Northern Railway merges into lessee Illinois Central Gulf Railroad. July 1, Guilford Transportation Industries purchases the Boston and Maine Corporation, bankrupt since March 1970. August 1, the Anthracite Railway replaces Conrail as operator of the former Reading Company line between Emmaus and Pennsburg. The lines will be taken over by the Blue Mountain and Reading Railroad in mid-1988 and East Penn Railways on July 1, 1995. December, the Detroit, Toledo and Ironton Railroad merges into parent Trunk Western Railroad. December 30, the Norfolk, Franklin and Danville Railway, successor to the Atlantic and Danville Railway, merges into parent Norfolk and Western Railway. December 31, the Toledo, Peoria and Western Railroad merges into parent Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. 1984 January 4, Guilford Transportation Industries purchases the Delaware and Hudson Railway from Norfolk and Western Railway subsidiary D-Reco, Inc. January 19, the St. Louis Southwestern Railway of Texas merges into La St. Louis Southwestern Railway. March, the Fonda, Johnstown and Gloversville Railroad, not Class 1 since 1919, ceases operations. July, the Louisville, Henderson and St. Louis Railway merges into Lacey Seaboard System Railroad. November 1, Southern Pacific Transportation Company subsidiary Northwestern Pacific Railroad sells its lines north of Willits to the Eureka Southern Railroad. The North Coast Rail Authority will buy the company's property on April 1, 1992. December 31, the Bessemer and Lake Erie Railroad, Duluth, Mississippi and Iron Range Railway, and Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad are demoted to Class 2, leaving 28 Class 1 railroads. 1985 Burlington Northern Inc. merges into parent Burlington Northern Railroad. February 19, Soo Line Railroad, subsidiary to Milwaukee Road Inc., acquires the property of the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific Railroad in trusteeship since February 13, 1978. March 1, the Indiana and Ohio Railway takes over from Conrail on a piece of the former Cincinnati, Lebanon and Northern Railway. Another segment will be transferred on December 19, 1986. May 1, the Raris Railway begins operating the former Butte, Anaconda and Pacific Railway. The name will be changed back to B&P on July 19, 2007. July, the Gulf and Mississippi Railroad buys a number of lines from the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad, including most of the old Gulf, Mobile and Northern Railroad and the former Mobile and Ohio Railroad south of Corinth. Mid-South Rail Corporation subsidiary South Rail Corporation will take over in April 1988. After the Kansas City Southern Railway takes control in 1993, it will dispose of portions including the XM&O Tuscaloosa branch, XM&O Meridian Waynesboro, and XGM&N Houston Middleton. December, the Chicago Central and Pacific Railroad buys the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad's Chicago-Omaha Main Line and branches. December 31, with the demise of the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific Railroad, and the Southern Railway's decision to combine its subsidiaries in its report to the ICC, the number of Class 1 railroads drops to 24. 1986 January 1, the Milwaukee Road Inc. and Minneapolis, Northfield and Southern Railway merge into parent Soo Line Railroad. March 18, the Indiana Railroad begins operating most of the former Indianapolis Southern Railroad, purchased from successor Illinois Central Gulf Railroad. March 31, the Mid-South Rail Corporation acquires lines from the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad, including the former Alabama and Vicksburg Railway and Vicksburg, Shreveport and Pacific Railway between Meridian and Shreveport, and a portion of the old Gulf and Ship Island Railroad between Gulfport and Hattiesburg. June, the Atlanta and West Point Railroad merges into the Seaboard System Railroad, whose predecessors have controlled it since 1920. July 1, CSX Corporation's subsidiary Seaboard System Railroad is renamed CSX Transportation. July 21, the Rochester and Southern Railroad begins operations on a portion of CSX Transportation lessor Buffalo, Rochester and Pittsburgh Railway's line to Rochester. August 27, the Paducah and Louisville Railway begins operations on a line in Kentucky bought from the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad. September, the Dakota, Minnesota and Eastern Railroad buys the Chicago and Northwestern Transportation Company's line between Rapid City, South Dakota and Winona, Minnesota. September 15, the Nashville and Eastern Railroad replaces CSX transportation on the remaining piece of the Tennessee Central Railway sold to the Louisville and Nashville Railroad in 1968. From Nashville to Monterey, December 8, the Winchester and Western Railroad takes over the old Cumberland Valley and Martinsburg Railroad from Conrail. December 31, the Elgin, Joliet and Eastern Railway drops to Class II. CSX Transportation, the Norfolk Southern Corporation, and the Union Pacific Railroad begin submitting combined reports for all subsidiaries, thus removing the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, Seaboard System Railroad, Southern Railway, Norfolk and Western Railway, Western Pacific Railroad, and Missouri Pacific Railroad from the list of Class I railroads, now numbering 18. 1987 March 26, the stock of government-owned Conrail is sold to private investors. April 28, the Chicago, Missouri and Western Railway acquires almost all of the former Alton Railroad from the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad. It will declare bankruptcy in less than a year. April 30, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad merges into the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, which has controlled it since 1963. June 15, the Sacramento Northern Railway is merged into parent Western Pacific Railroad. June 16, the Western Pacific Railroad merges into parent Union Pacific Railroad. August 31, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway merges into CSX Transportation. October 11, Wisconsin Central Limited acquires Canadian Pacific Limited, subsidiary Sioux Line Railroad's Lake States Transportation Division, including most of the remaining trackage east of Minneapolis St. Paul, formerly belonging to the Duluth, South Shore and Atlantic Railroad, Minneapolis, St. Paul and Sault Ste. Marie Railroad, and Wisconsin Central Railroad, which merged in 1961 to form the Sioux. October 31, the Montana Rail Link leases the former Northern Pacific Railway main line across Montana from the Burlington Northern Railroad. December 31, the Oregon Short Line Railroad, Oregon-Washington Railroad and Navigation Company, and Los Angeles and Salt Lake Railroad are merged into Lessee Union Pacific Railroad, as is subsidiary Spokane International Railroad. 1988 February 23, the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad, which has sold off most of the former Gulf, Mobile and Ohio Railroad, is renamed Illinois Central Railroad. June 1, the Carolina and Northwestern Railway is merged into parent Southern Railway. June 20, Guilford Transportation Industries subsidiary Delaware and Hudson Railway files for bankruptcy. The New York, Susquehanna and Western Railway assumes temporary operation of the D&H. June 27, the Southern Railway acquires the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad's line between Fulton, Kentucky and Haleyville, Alabama, including a piece of the old Mobile and Ohio Railroad between Jackson and Corinth. The Redmond Railway will take over south of Corinth in 1995, and the West Tennessee Railroad, which already operates the XM and AMP, north of Jackson, will lease the line from Fulton via Jackson to Corinth in 2001. July 19, the Buffalo and Pittsburgh Railroad acquires much of the former Buffalo, Rochester and Pittsburgh Railway, then leased to CSX Transportation, as well as the remnants of the former Buffalo and Susquehanna Railroad near Dubois. The bridge and AMP remains a CSX subsidiary, though none of its lines have been operated by CSX since then. August 12, Union Pacific Railroad subsidiary Missouri Pacific Railroad acquires control of the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad. September, New Canadian Pacific Limited, subsidiary Canadian Atlantic Railway takes over all CP operations east of Mégantic, Quebec, including the former International Railway of Maine. September 20, the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway merges into Lessee Norfolk and Western Railway. October 7, the new Ann Arbor Railroad begins operating the former Michigan Interstate Railway south of Ann Arbor. That company had been bankrupt since January 1983. October 11, the Arizona Eastern Railway begins operations on the Bowie-Miami line of the former Arizona Eastern Railroad, purchased from successor Southern Pacific Transportation Company. October 13, Rio Grande Industries, parent of the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad, buys control of the Southern Pacific Transportation Company, including subsidiaries St. Louis Southwestern Railway and Northwestern Pacific Railroad. The Southern Pacific name is retained for the combined system. 1989 January 9, the Western Maryland Railway is merged into Lessee CSX Transportation, whose predecessors have controlled it since 1967. February 1, the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway sells the former Toledo, Peoria and Western Railroad to a new Toledo, Peoria and Western Railway. May 1, the Aberdeen, Carolina and Western Railway leases the former Norfolk Southern Railway west of Gulf, North Carolina from the Southern Railway. May 19, the St. Lawrence and Atlantic Railroad buys the former Atlantic and St. Lawrence Railroad from the Canadian National Railway. In 1998, affiliate St. Lawrence and Atlantic Railroad will replace CN on the portion of the line in Canada. August, the Elk River Railroad buys an out-of-service portion of the former Coal and Coke Railway from CSX Transportation. November 8, Southern Pacific Transportation Company subsidiary SPCSL Corporation acquires the east half of the old Alton Railroad from the bankrupt Chicago, Missouri and Western Railway. December 1, the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad merges into parent Missouri Pacific Railroad. December 31, the Boston and Maine Corporation and Delaware and Hudson Railway are demoted from Class 1, combined with the demise of the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad. This drops the number of Class 1 railroads to 15. 1990 CSX Transportation subsidiary Staten Island Railroad ends freight service. Conrail will reactivate the line in 2007. January, the Gateway Western Railway acquires the remainder of the old Alton Railroad from the bankrupt Chicago, Missouri and Western Railway. Through a haulage agreement, it gives the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway access to St. Louis. April 2, the Chesapeake and Albemarle Railroad leases the former Norfolk Southern Railway east of Edenton, North Carolina from the Southern Railway. May 17, the new Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway acquires lines from the Norfolk and Western Railway, including most of the former Akron, Canton and Youngstown Railroad and Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway, as well as the lease of the Pittsburgh and West Virginia Railroad. June 29, the Carolina, Clinchfield and Ohio Railway is merged into Lessee CSX Transportation. October, the Cincinnati, Indianapolis and Western Railroad is merged into Lessee CSX Transportation. October, the Indiana and Ohio Central Railroad begins operating a portion of the old Detroit, Toledo and Ironton Railroad between Washington Courthouse and Springfield, Ohio, purchased from Canadian National Railway subsidiary Her Trunk Western Railroad. Affiliated Indiana and Ohio Railway will acquire most of the remainder from Springfield north to Diane, Michigan. In 1997, GTW retains ownership between Diane and Detroit. November, Conrail acquires full control of the Monongahela Railway by buying the 1/3 shares owned by CSX Transportation and the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad. December 15, a Reading Blue Mountain and Northern Railroad begins operations over most of the remaining Reading Company lines north of Reading, which they bought from Conrail. December 31, the Southern Railway acquires direct control of the Norfolk and Western Railway from parent Norfolk Southern Corporation, and is renamed Norfolk Southern Railway. 1991 January, Canadian Pacific Limited purchases the bankrupt Delaware and Hudson Railway. January 14, the Wichita, Tillman and Jackson Railway begins operations on the remaining piece of the old Wichita Falls and Northwestern Railway between Wichita Falls and Altus, bought from Success Missouri-Kansas Texas Railroad. June 1, the Texas and Oklahoma Railroad buys the old Kansas City, Mexico and Orient Railway and Kansas City, Mexico and Orient Railway of Texas between Thomas, Oklahoma and Maryneal, Texas from successor Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. Farm Rail will take over the portion in Oklahoma in January 1993, and the T&AMPO will later abandon all but Sweetwater Maryneal. October 10, the railroad properties of the Richmond, Fredericksburg and Potomac Railroad are conveyed to new CSX Transportation subsidiary Richmond, Fredericksburg and Potomac Railway. CSX had owned an 80% share in the RF and AMP-P, the other 20% being the Norfolk Southern Railways. November 12, the Wabash Railroad merges into Lessee Norfolk and Western Railway. 1992 January 2, the South Orient Railroad begins operating portions of the former Fort Worth and Rio Grande Railway and Kansas City, Mexico and Orient Railway of Texas, bought from successor Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway, between Santa Ana, Texas and the Mexican border. Texas Pacifico Transportation will replace the South Orient in 2000. February 17, the Lake State Railway takes over operation of the Detroit and Mackinac Railway. April 11, Conrail sells the remnants of the Evansville, Indianapolis and Detroit Railway and a former Vandalia Railroad branch to the Indiana Southern Railroad. April 17, the Columbus and Ohio River Railroad begins operations on the former Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Chicago and St. Louis Railroad main line between Columbus and Steubenville, Ohio, sold by Conrail. July 6, the Louisiana and Arkansas Railway and Fort Smith and Van Buren Railway merge into parent Kansas City Southern Railway. September 13, CSX Transportation subsidiary Three Rivers Railway takes over the remaining trackage of the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad. October 1, the Northwestern Pacific Railroad merges into parent Southern Pacific Transportation Company. December 21, San Joaquin Valley Railroad lessor Tulare Valley Railroad leases a portion of the property of the Sunset Railway, a joint subsidiary of the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway and Southern Pacific Transportation Company. The rest is abandoned. December 31, the Colorado and Wyoming Railway sells its southern division at Trinidad, Colorado to the Trinidad Railway, leaving only the middle division at Pueblo. 1993 May 1, the Monongahela Railway merges into parent Conrail. May 4, Rio Grande Industries, parent of the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad, Southern Pacific Transportation Company, and St. Louis Southwestern Railway, is renamed Southern Pacific Rail Corporation. June, Kansas City Southern Industries, parent of the Kansas City Southern Railway, acquires control of the Mid-South Corporation, parent of several non-Class I railroads: Mid-South Rail Corporation, Mid-Louisiana Rail Corporation, South Rail Corporation, and Conrail Corporation. August 27, Wisconsin Central Limited, subsidiary Fox Valley and Western Limited, acquires the properties of the Green Bay and Western Railroad, Fox River Valley Railroad, and Arnape and Western Railway. September 17, CSX Transportation takes over the operations of subsidiary Three Rivers Railway. September 26, Shortline California Northern Railroad replaces the Southern Pacific Transportation Company as operator of the former Northwestern Pacific Railroad. 1994 January 1, the Mid-South Rail Corporation is merged into the Kansas City Southern Railway, its parent since June 1993. January 1, the Bayline Railroad begins operating the former Atlanta and St. Andreas Bay Railway. March 12, the Louisville and Indiana Railroad begins operating a former major branch of the Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Chicago and St. Louis Railroad between Indianapolis and Louisville, sold by Conrail. May 20, South Orient Railroad affiliate Centex Rail Link begins operating most of the former Fort Worth and Rio Grande Railway, bought from successor Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway, between Fort Worth and Ricker, Texas. The Fort Worth and Western Railroad will take over in 1998. July 15, service ends on the Cambria and Indiana Railroad. December 31, Canadian Pacific Limited, subsidiary Canadian American Railway, including the former International Railway of Maine, shuts down. Bangor and Aroostook Railroad affiliate Canadian American Railroad restores service west of Macadam, New Brunswick on January 6, 1995, and the New Brunswick Southern Railway begins operations between Macadam and St. Stephen on January 8. NBSR subsidiary Eastern Maine Railway takes over between Brownville Junction, Maine and Macadam on April 10, 1995. 1995 February 4, the New England Central Railroad begins operating the property of Canadian National Railway subsidiary Central Vermont Railway. September 22, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Corporation acquires control of the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway and Burlington Northern Railroad. October 1, the Chicago and Northwestern Transportation Company merges into the Union Pacific Railroad. October 1, the Portland and Western Railroad begins operating a portion of the old Oregon Electric Railway north of Salem, leased from successor Burlington Northern Railroad. In 2003 it will lease the rest of the old main line from Salem south to Eugene. November 17, the Canadian National Railway is privatized. 1996 February 9, the Illinois and Midland Railroad begins operating the property of the Chicago and Illinois Midland Railway. June, the Illinois Central Railroad buys control of the Chicago Central and Pacific Railroad, which it had spun off in 1985. July 4, Canadian Pacific Limited is renamed back to Canadian Pacific Railway, its name until 1971, and a new CP Limited takes over as holding company. August, Conrail sells its main line through the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area, formerly Lehigh Valley Railroad and Central Railroad of New Jersey, to the Reading Blue Mountain and Northern Railroad. September, the Connecticut Southern Railroad replaces Conrail as freight operator on Amtrak's New Haven-Springfield line, one of the main lines of the old New York, New Haven and Hartford Railroad. September 11, Union Pacific Railroad parent Union Pacific Corporation takes control of Southern Pacific Rail Corporation's subsidiaries Southern Pacific Pacific Transportation Company, St. Louis Southwestern Railway, and Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad. September 28, Bangor and Aroostook Railroad affiliate Quebec Southern Railway and subsidiary Northern Vermont Railroad replaced the Canadian Pacific Railway on several lines east of Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec, including the Newport and Richford Railroad to Wells River, Vermont. October 1, new Canadian Pacific Railway subsidiary St. Lawrence and Hudson Railway begins operating the portion of CP's network east and south of Toronto, including subsidiary Delaware and Hudson Railway. December 31, the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway and Burlington Northern Railroad, both subsidiaries of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Corporation, merged to form the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe Railway. 1997 January 1, the Missouri Pacific Railroad merges into parent Union Pacific Railroad. April 5, Montana Rail Link affiliate and AM Rail Link begins operating former Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific Railroad lines bought from Canadian Pacific Railway subsidiary Soo Line Railroad, with main lines stretching west from Chicago to Minneapolis, St. Paul, Sheldon, Iowa, and Kansas City. May 5, the Kansas City Southern Railway acquires control of the Gateway Western Railway, which operates the west half of the former Alton Railroad. May 11, the New York and Atlantic Railway takes over freight operations on the primarily passenger-serving Long Island Railroad. June, Transportation Ferroviaria Mexicana, which would be Class 1 by U.S. standards, begins operating a portion of the government-owned Ferrocarriles Nacionales de Mexico. June 30, the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad and SPCSL Corporation merge into parent Union Pacific Railroad. September 30, the St. Louis Southwestern Railway merges into parent Union Pacific Railroad. 1998 February, the Canadian National Railway buys control of the Illinois Central Railroad. February 1, the Southern Pacific Transportation Company merges into parent Union Pacific Railroad. February 19, Ferrocarril Mexicano, which would be Class 1 by U.S. standards, begins operating a large portion of the government-owned Ferrocarriles Nacionales de Mexico. August 22, CSX Transportation and the Norfolk Southern Railway acquire control of Conrail, owning respectively 42% and 58%, with equal voting rights. September 1, the Norfolk and Western Railway merges into parent Norfolk Southern Railway. 1999 June 1, most Conrail lines are sold to two new subsidiaries, New York Central Lines LLC and Pennsylvania Lines LLC, which are leased to CSX Transportation and the Norfolk Southern Railway respectively. In three shared assets areas, Conrail retains ownership and operates as a contract carrier on behalf of CSX and NS. 2000-2001 January 1, the St. Lawrence and Hudson Railway merges into parent Canadian Pacific Railway, from which it was split in 1996, making the Delaware and Hudson Railway again a direct CP subsidiary. April 23, the Western New York and Pennsylvania Railroad begins operating the Old Erie Railroad main line between Hornell, New York and Corry, Pennsylvania, sold by the Norfolk Southern Railway. In January 2002, it extends operations on the Erie from Corry to Meadville, on which Oil Creek and Titusville lines, Inc., had replaced Conrail in 1995. October 1, the Gateway Western Railway is merged into the Kansas City Southern Railway, its parent since 1997. October 9, the Canadian National Railway acquires control of Wisconsin Central Limited. and subsidiaries, including Fox Valley and Western Limited, successor to the Green Bay and Western Railroad. 2002 July 31, Dakota, Minnesota and Eastern Railroad, subsidiary Iowa, Chicago and Eastern Railroad begins operations after buying the I&M Rail Links property. December 3, the Western Railway of Alabama merges into parent CSX Transportation. 2003 January 9, the Montreal, Mainland Atlantic Railway begins operating the former Bangor and Aroostook Railroad and affiliates Canadian American Railroad, Quebec Southern Railway, and Northern Vermont Railroad north of Newport. South of Newport, the Washington County Railroad takes over. 2004 January 1, the Buffalo and Pittsburgh Railroad leases the Pittsburgh and Sherman Railroad. May, the Canadian National Railway takes control of the Bessemer and Lake Erie Railroad and Duluth, Mississippi and Iron Range Railway, both former Class I railroads. August, the Chicago, Fort Wayne and Eastern Railroad leases from CSX Transportation the old Pittsburgh, Fort Wayne and Chicago Railway main line west of Crestline, Ohio. August 27, Conrail subsidiaries New York Central Lines LLC and Pennsylvania Lines LLC emerged into their lessees, CSX Transportation and the Norfolk Southern Railway respectively. 2005 January 1, the Kansas City Southern Railway takes control of the Texas-Mexican Railway. January 24, the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe Railway is renamed BNSF Railway. March 25, the Appalachian and Ohio Railroad leases ex-Baltimore and Ohio Railroad trackage from CSX Transportation, including a portion of the old Coal and Coke Railway. September 25, the Kansas City Southern Railway leases the remaining pieces of the original Louisiana and Arkansas Railway to the Louisiana Southern Railroad. December, the Kansas City Southern Railway takes control of transportation Ferrovia Mexicana and renames it Kansas City Southern de Mexico. 2006 May 27, the Indiana Railroad takes over the remaining portion of the old Chicago, Teton Southeastern Railway still owned by Canadian Pacific Railway subsidiary Soo Line Railroad between Teton and Bedford. 2007 June, the Carolina Coastal Railway leases the former Norfolk Southern Railway between Raleigh and Plymouth, North Carolina from the current Norfolk Southern Railway. 2008 March, the Arizona Eastern Railway buys the former Arizona and New Mexico Railway from successor Union Pacific Railroad. October 30, the Canadian Pacific Railway takes control of the Dakota, Minnesota and Eastern Railroad and subsidiary Iowa, Chicago and Eastern Railroad, the latter consisting of trackage spun off by the CP in 1997. 2009 February 1, the Canadian National Railway takes control of the Elgin, Joliet and Eastern Railway. March 8, the Grand Elk Railroad leases the old Grand Rapids and Indiana Railway between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo from the Norfolk Southern Railway.